Welcome to Stealership Stories, where we ripped all of your CDs into our iTunes while working on your car.
Ugh, except for bullshit country music.
Country sucks. Just throwing it out there.
Wheeler Walker is pretty good.
No comment.
Kind of country.
So speaking of CDs.
CDs nuts.
I cannot listen to Damage Plan or Black Label Society ever again.
Yeah.
You know,
some things will be ruined by...
I used to like those bands, but there was a guy I worked in front of where my box was. There was a wall that separated the shop, and it was about 3.5, 4 feet tall.
Yeah.
And this guy worked directly opposite of me, and the fucker didn't shower. Okay,
Ever.
He
Rarely.
wore the same uniform. He had long hair and
Baseball cap. Really scuzzy.
just
Baseball.
dirty, right?
But nice
the
guy.
super nice.
Oh,
that
he's
was the
so
bad
nice.
part.
I know.
It was so hard to make one of our
an
managers
asshole.
tell him to take a shower. So I would go over there. Hey man, have you heard this new CD? Let's try this one, right?
Just played
Oh yeah.
on repeat.
He only had a 3 CD changer, and they would rotate one after another over and over. And I can't remember the third CD to save my life, but anytime I hear those bands and it comes on, I get this smell of like rotting
taste.
peanut oil in my nose.
God.
It was so bad. It would go from I had 2 bays, right? So 2 cars,
Right.
and there's like a 4-foot gap in between the cars, 4 or 5 feet. I would be at the back corner of the second car, furthest away from my box, and still smell it in that area.
Wow.
It was like the smell of a garbage truck or rotting flesh in a garbage can. It was just, but he was so nice.
He was a really nice
So,
guy.
the manager, I think, pulled him into the office at least twice at random times and said, hey, man, we think you do great work here, but we've had customers complain that when you leave their vehicle, there's a slight residual smell. And,
It's a good way.
It's kind of offensive. So we'd like you to at least try to wear extra deodorant or maybe shower once or twice.
Keep your hygiene up a little bit.
Coming to find out, that wasn't his parents like super strict on him as a kid being super clean.
He had
So
some mental issues.
when he grew up, he just didn't care.
let himself
right?
go.
But again, super nice guy. And
That may be something you encounter getting back into your car and wondering what the hell happened in this thing.
or they were mad at you and we did bury one in your seat.
There could be that too. There could be a dead fish under your passenger seat. Speaking of weird smells or terrible smells in the shop,
I did not. I'm telling you, that's my feet or it's not me.
we got to the shop today. I got to the shop today and it smelled like burnt hair rolled in a burnt turd. It was horrifying. What happened was
What had happened?
One of the technicians decided to leave a battery maintainer, which isn't really that far out of the ordinary, on a car over the weekend. He worked Saturday with me. I worked Saturday and he worked Saturday. Left the battery on the charger over the weekend. A maintainer too. It wasn't a high voltage charge or anything. It cooked the battery. It had an internal failure of one of the cells, and that was the first time I'd ever recall, at least, smelling that exploded, and not like a explosion, but a burst battery that leaked out onto the floor, and it took hours to get the smell out of the shop, even with the doors open. It was a super cold day today too, so we didn't want to leave the doors open too long.
My battery was fine when I brought it in, so you guys charged it.
Permeated. Well, the good news was it was a lot car, so somebody's got battery acid all over their battery tray on their brand new C-Class, but it does happen. But anyway, again,
so
I digress.
The smells.
Oh, the smells. But I think that's something you, as technicians, are going to have to deal with later on in your life, all those chemicals and things that you have to experience in repairing cars.
Well, you do get some of the cars where
imagine dealing with.
Let's look at an old Dodge B model van. People live in those things.
Oh,
they bring them in and they want the blower motor changed. So you've got to put your face down there
So awful.
in that area. Or
do you remember the lady that when we lived in Pekin that had the old 202 that was like burgundy colored, and it was full of newspaper? It had cat food in it. The cats, obviously, while the car was in the garage, must have had the window down. They lived in this car.
I remember the cat prints on the top of the car. That's about it.
shit in the car.
Gotta
They
shit somewhere.
had babies
Everybody
in the car.
poops. We got that book.
They had everything in this car, and
They
it was the
hotboxed it.
most
Nice.
foul-smelling, garbage-filled car. But the lady was just kind of an eccentric cat lady, and she would pay for repairs on the car. She was technically a good customer from a money standpoint, but the car was awful. Fortunately, she lived at the time when we were in a smaller facility. She lived blocks down the street.
Mm-hmm.
She lived right there on the main drag. We were very close by, so it was something that, you know, was in a very close proximity. So she'd be there frequently to get things done, and the car just, it was uninhabitable. I don't know how she managed to drive this car. But from what I heard from our drivers, we had to unfortunately send a driver out to deliver the car a few times.
Oh man.
The house was in the same condition. There was a slot in the garage that was the same size as the car you would pull into. There was a cutout for the door to
Like
open
a
up.
hoarder or
Oh
something?
yeah, just stacks of newspapers and garbage. The house was just a path you could follow through to get through things.
Well, yeah, what's weird is most of the dirtiest cars I've worked on were doctors, right?
Oh yeah,
You'd open it up and there would just
Frequently.
be shit upon shit falling and overflowing.
like old scrubs and gloves.
It was either
and-
like, I don't care, I can afford another one,
yeah.
or it was
Right,
just,
it's a lease. I'm going to turn this thing in.
I'm
in
so
2 years
meticulous
or 3
everywhere
years.
else in life that my
I don't
car,
give a
I don't
shit.
give a shit.
Yeah. And we'd have, remember the doctor with the R class that had the back seats folded down like a truck, and the whole thing was filled with garbage and
That's the one I'm
miscellaneous.
referring to.
Yeah. Miscellaneous.
That's the guy.
That's the guy.
So, do you remember my song?
Anyway.
Do you remember my song I came up with? You would bring me
You
a
have to
car.
refresh me
Come
with
on,
my
I
memory.
want you. Let's dig deep because we ain't worked together in a while, right?
It's been a little bit.
So, a New York Minute. You would bring me a ticket. I would look over the car, and you would come back and you would say, "What do you think?" Right? And if it was good, I'd hand you an estimate. And if it was bad, I would go a little something like this. me, turd nugget. Right?
Yeah.
It was a turd fucking nugget.
Yep.
Get this car out of this fucking shop. It doesn't belong here. They don't deserve to drive it. It's garbage. Right. Some cars, you know what? I don't care if I'd make the money on it. That's not the point, right? Some people just, they need something better, safer, you know. There's a difference between me selling you a bunch of needed repairs and making some money on it, and you got a good running car, compared to this car will never be a good running car, no matter how much time and effort the best mechanic puts into it. It just, there's so much wrong with it. By the time you put that time and effort into it, you could have had another car, or like just spent that money on another car, brand new, or even, you know, that would have taken care of 2 years worth of payments, right?
Right.
So why spend $7,000 on this repair when you can pay $300 a month for a year, or $200 a month for almost 2 years, right, on this car, on a new car,
For
and
sure.
just let it ride. And we've gotten quite a few people out of cars just to tell them, hey, you know what? Don't waste your money on this.
Or if it's an older car, especially the lower models, C-Class, even older E-Classes, they're so cheap now for people to buy. Most of the time in overhauling an engine or replacing a transmission, you could find a same car, similar car with newer, potentially lower miles, better condition for the cost that you're going to spend, or maybe a little more than you're going to spend on that one major repair. I'm dealing with a client right now as we speak that has an 07 C-Class, 126,000 miles, that the car, he sent me a whole laundry list of things that the car is doing. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 current fault codes. It burns oil on acceleration. He has to add a quart every few hundred miles.
Ooh, that's bad.
He's wanting to get a quote on redoing the valve seals, the valve stem seals. It's just not logical. Those are what, $7,500 cars, an 07 C-Class with 120,000 miles. It's just not logical to spend $3,500, $4,000 on removing an engine, sending it off to a machine shop, still potentially having other issues with the car that may not be present right now, when you could find another like model or similar model car for the same amount of money. At a certain point, it just, you know, some people are attached to cars. We've had people come in that want to get an engine replaced on a 60s or a 50s classic Mercedes that is a family car, an heirloom, and they don't mind spending $25,000 on this car that they plan on keeping the rest of their lives or passing down to their kids or grandkids, what have you. But on a pedestrian, normal A to B transportation car, just part of this whole process is just being logical and understanding that this money is not, you're not going to get that back out of it.
Oh, never.
We've got a perfect example in the shop right now. It's the first time the car's ever been here. 2008 ML350 towed in. Car hasn't been driven in a while, and the condition everything is rusty and it just looks terrible. The front tires are completely bald. It has passenger sized car tires on it, which are bald in the front. Front brakes are shot, and it needs an AC compressor, all the pulleys, the AC compressor locked up, and it threw the belt, so it won't charge or cool the engine.
Yeah.
But spending $2,500 on getting the car just running and driving doesn't make that a $2,500 car. The bumper's cracked, the body's in rough condition, the inside looks terrible. Some of these investments are not they just are not intelligent. It's not a wise decision.
Well, another part of the equation too is, let's say they just bought the car. They just went and got a loan for it.
Right.
Well, I'm going to pay on it either way, so I got to fix it, right? Well, it's just not the case. Never think, okay, even though a car is an investment, it shouldn't be taken as an investment because it depreciates. It goes down
extremely.
To me, a car is like the movies. You go to the movie, you get an experience out of it, you walk away with nothing. That's what cars are.
Yeah.
I flip-flopped over the years. I used to want the coolest, the hottest, the fastest, and that was my goal. Let me get one of those. And now, you know what? Doesn't matter what car you drive, they all take you to Walmart, right? So
and
I just want something
levels
to get me around.
Right.
And the older I get, if I can afford it, then I'll go ahead and mosey into that area, because I like to have something cool, something nice. Maybe kids would like another hot rod, or I wouldn't mind owning a fancy car one time. All the customers used to say, well, hey, Lou, what kind of Benz do you drive?
Right.
I'm like,
me too, over the years.
2005 Cavalier.
Yep. I've had one Mercedes, a 76 240D, and that's because I bought it off a client for $1,000, and it was perfect. It ran great, but I only kept it for 6 months and then ended up selling it, and get rid of it. But it's not something that I need to fulfill anything in my life. I'm fine with Volkswagen getting me back and forth to work. That's what I do. 99.9% of my driving is back and forth to work. Yeah, what am I going to drive, a supercar or something cool?
I think one of the things that tainted us was not only the taint, but I would tell people, I jump in and out of your dream car daily like it's nothing. To me, it's just a car, right?
Cars around.
It's my job. Them. Yeah, so there's a difference between I appreciated them.
Oh,
I liked them. They were nice. It was awesome to work on new cars, right? How many times did I get dirty? I was like,
very rarely.
If I got dirty, I would stop.
Go home. Come back the next day.
Fuck this, I'm out. I would change my clothes. I would wash. I wore aprons, goggles, gloves. I would wear gloves on top of gloves. Because people don't want to see you dirty when you're working on their $200,000 dream car. They were nice to experience. But then again, we would see the failures over and over again, and what they would charge for the parts on almost any brand. We're not being specifically for one brand, on any make and model. And the more sophisticated these cars get, the more that the first time they break, it's going to be more convenient for you to get a new car than it is to repair your car.
Yeah,
and cost effective, because there's almost nothing that you can take off, refurbish, and put back on like the old days.
Right.
You just have to replace the part.
You fix it yourself.
And now when one thing goes, it takes out 12 other things.
Right.
Or you got to, like we talked, you got to put something on to figure out what else failed in the meantime that caused that one, or whatever the case is. And it gets too down the rabbit hole.
It can. And that's kind of one of the points we're talking about in this episode, is about diagnosing concerns. Diagnosing is specifically odd concerns and what's all involved with doing that. We talked a little bit about it in the previous episode and your experience with the Dodge dealership, but what is diagnosis? What happens after you bring a car in with a complaint? What goes on behind the glass, so to speak? But it ranges. And we talked a little bit about from people going to AutoZone and getting just a code printout sheet, bringing that in, saying, I want all these parts replaced that flagged as bad, or someone that spends time to actually check the components and see what is causing these fault codes to occur, if it's just a cause of another failed component. I always think back about that car. It was a C-Class that wouldn't start, and another shop, maybe two shops, had worked on it and tried to fix it, and it came in and we were able to finally fix it, and it ended up being an O2 sensor.
Oh, right.
That
yes.
prevented that car from
That
starting.
thing fucking
and it was
drove me
something
bonkers.
we'd never seen before, or I'd never seen before. And it's so rare for an O2 sensor to prevent a car from starting.
I don't even know. I wish I was smarter than I am. I'm not. I always tell people I'm not smart. I'm knowledgeable, right? If I was smart, I'd be making these things. I wouldn't be fixing them, right?
Right.
So I believe that sensor was taking excess voltage from the module or
However
shorting
it
something
failed,
inside.
it
It
had to have
would
shorted
not let it
internally.
start. And it shouldn't. The sensor don't even work to start the car,
No.
right? It works when the car's up to temperature and
Right.
running. So
It made no sense.
I want to say I just started unplugging stuff to see. I was at wit's end, and I just started unplugging shit to see what would let it start.
Right.
And that did it. Because I had another car. It was a cam solenoid magnet. It was an old 202 body.
Mhm.
And the car would run for about 5 seconds and shut off. Now, normally that's indicating a theft issue,
Crank
but this
sensor.
didn't have something like that. And I'm like, okay, well, what is doing it? So anytime you turn a key on, all of your dash lights should come on. Man, I just ran into this with my neighbor's car. His Ford is misfiring like a motherfucker. No check engine light, no flashing light, all kinds of codes, right? I'm like, why isn't this light coming on? Because the light's not coming on. I turned the key on.
It's burning.
They took the bulb out.
Oh my god.
Yeah, which that's what we're assuming happened. Either that or it was on for so long that it burned out, right? Because
Damn.
I'm looking and I'm like, it's so obvious that it's not obvious because I don't fix cars much anymore, right? I do stuff online, so
Try
I'm
not
not
to.
physically in front of a car. So I was just, as we're driving, I'm telling him, well, when he turned the key on, the light should come on. And then something in my head said, hey, dumbass, why don't you shut the car off and see if the light comes on? So we pull over. I'm like, well, let me double check that. Check your manual to see which circle should have the light in it.
Mhm.
And turn the key on. Sure as shit, no fucking light. Like, well, that's why. And he's
Wow.
like, how did you know that? Or why is this happening? Like, well, just it's something that you learn along the way. So anyways, I was trying to find something that activated, because it was a test, because everything that runs something in the car does a self-test to it, whether it's the first time you turn the key on or whether it's while you're driving it, it'll do a
Right.
quick self-test. And that's when it decides to set a fault code or throw on a warning light when it fails its own self-test. And the car would just keep shutting off at the exact same time. The best kind of car to diagnose is one that's consistent at failing,
Right.
not intermittent. Intermittent meaning whenever the fuck it decides to do that. So long story short, short story long, there was a magnet that activates an adjustable camshaft. And when I unplugged that magnet, the thing kept running. I did an ohms test to it. It was shorted and it was just pulling all the voltage from the module. It wouldn't pop a fuse. It wouldn't burn any wires. It would just suck all the voltage and kill the car. So diagnosis. Let's talk about some different types of diagnostics, diagnosis.
Pay $150.
Why do I got to pay you motherfuckers to tell you something I already know?
Just
So
fix it.
you bring your car to a shop. There's a couple different levels to me of diagnostics. If you have a mechanical noise, hey, I got this noise. It happens over bumps. Okay, I think I would charge a half hour, right, for a mechanical diagnostic noise.
Typically, it depends on the car and the situation. If it's a 220 S-Class and it's a creak noise in the front axle, you're going to have to put it up in the air to verify which side ball joint or which ball joint it was.
Right.
But
So
those things are 164 or 163s.
So on our end, when I do a diagnosis, it takes me time. Well, no, let's back it a little bit further. The flow of the shop. I don't think we've talked about the flow of the shop.
Sure.
Customer drives in, says, hey, Ralph, I got this problem. You say, okay. So you spend 10 to 15 minutes, sometimes more, sometimes less, going through the issues with them. Now you've got to type everything up on a document. You got to print it out. They've got to authorize maybe a basic diagnostics for each line, or just they've got to sign the ticket to say, yes, I allow you to work on my car, drive it, whatever. Then they may wait or they may go home. A waiter is what we call someone that waited. And a waiter is also someone we call the goddamn motherfucker. Why are they waiting? Don't worry about it. Just fix the car. So, and I was able to see both sides of that because as a tech, I would be mad because I felt more under pressure.
Right.
Because I know if they're waiting, they probably want to get somewhere else, like a doctor's appointment. Right. Again, don't fucking schedule shit.
Schedule two things.
I'll just stop by real quick, have an engine swapped, and then I'll go get my hair did. No, That's not how it works out.
Got to be in Bloomington by 12:30.
Yeah, and I need my car right now. Can you do it? So the car would come in. He would write up the ticket. The ticket may go to a dispatcher, or he may just come back and say, here's your customer. I need you to work on this car. So now I've got to look at the ticket, see what it needs, walk outside, find the car, or, they'd bring it to me, one of the two. If it's a noise, I got to drive it. So there's time to get out there in traffic, drive it around, find the right scenario to make the noise, bring it back in, take a couple minutes to rack it up properly so you don't drop a car. Thankfully, I've never dropped the car on a rack. Okay. I've done some shit that looked like I was going to drop a car. Never dropped the car on a rack.
Nightmare.
Picked it up in the air. Then you look around, you maybe measure some stuff or pry on some things, or, when a 3,000 pound car is on top of a ball joint, it makes a noise. When it's up in the air, you've got to simulate that somehow, whether it's prying, hitting with a hammer, which is why you don't want to watch people working on your car, because there's shit that I'm going to do to it that you're going to be like, oh, you poor car. Why is his hand up in there? Right. So we're hitting on stuff, we're banging on stuff. Sometimes we're standing in the engine bay, jumping up and down to make the car rock. There's four of us riding in trunks. There's four of us shaking the car violently left to right. So then we determine it needs a ball joint. All right. Now, I can't just call you and say, hey, it needs a ball joint. I've got to go to my computer. I've got to look up what a ball joint pays to replace, because there is a time guide that gives us the time. Then from there, I've got to submit a parts request to Parts. Parts has 10 guys that they're doing parts for. So they've got to wait to get my inquiry. And once they get my inquiry, they've got to look it up. And looking up parts is not as easy as it is at an O'Reilly's or an AutoZone or an Advance or a Napa. We've got to go by VIN, and things change constantly. Every 6 months, something's updated. Every week, something can be updated. You never know.
Superseded.
So it takes time for them to locate the right part, make sure it's for your VIN, which is your vehicle identification number. And then once they do have it, they've got to create a quote, print it out, bring it back to you. Then we assemble the parts and the labor, bring it back up to Ralph. Ralph's got to tell you the numbers, see what's in stock, see what parts are going to take a week to get in, see what are coming from Germany, right? The shit takes time. Okay. So you may say, why are you charging me a half hour to do this when it should only take 10 minutes? Maybe the actual touching of the car takes 10 minutes, but it's all that other little shit that you don't see.
Right.
Man, the cold's going on, happening as far as writing the ticket, getting it to the back, looking it over, driving it, assembling an estimate, bringing it back up. So now I got paid only a half hour, and it took me an hour and a half, right? Because I had to find the car, get the car, shovel the car out of snow, right? Or maybe somebody parked in front of me, goddamn detail, parked the fucking car. They took the keys, it's in a pocket, they went to lunch, or another tech locked the keys up in his toolbox and we can't move the car in front of it, all kinds of stupid shit. So you pay the diagnostic fee. If it's mechanical, we're going to bring it back and we're physically going to touch it and look at it and provide you an estimate. If it's electronic, there's going to be a basic diagnosis where we hook up the scanner. The scanner's going to run, I'm not even going to say test. The scanner just runs a process and it shows you what control modules had what fault codes in it, which could mean those fault codes or those control modules ran a test and those are the fault codes that came back, or the codes that came back were because those sensors or switches or solenoids did not meet specifications within a certain amount of time. All right. So from there, we got to stop and say, listen, I've seen this 100 times. It's going to be an oxygen sensor. Here's a quote for that. End of diagnostics. But when you approve this, I'm going to double check it and test it when I get down there to make sure it's bad, right? Not just put it in there because that's what the code said. Okay. The other side of it is, okay, this part is inside the dash. I've never seen this problem before. I don't feel comfortable quoting this, so I want at least 4 more hours authorized just in case it's going to take me that long. Instead of, okay, give me an hour. Okay, use up the hour. Let's stop. Call the customer back. We need another hour, right? Why make 14 calls like we discussed before? Give me a dollar amount you're comfortable with, and we'll work with it up to there. So if you ever get a shop that says, we can diagnose it, but it's going to cost you $900 in diagnostics, then I want you to ask why. Why on earth is it cost $900 to diagnose something, right? Like, what does it entail? Is this a maximum? Would I get money back?
Does it go towards the repair?
Right. Yeah. If you find it within an hour, will you just fix it? And then still, like, maybe it came to $500 total. Am I getting $400 off that authorization or whatever the case is? So, why do we charge for diagnostics? Because we got to account for our time, for the time that we're touching the car. Not only that, the machines we use are expensive.
Sure.
The official Mercedes one, I believe we paid $30,000 to license it for a year almost, right? Or a 4 or 5, something like that, right? It's ungodly amount.
3 of those tools in the shop. We have 3 Zentry tools.
And then on top of that, you've got to pay for the licenses to access the workshop information, which is like $3,000 a year. Okay. So there's $15,000 right there just to have people access it. So the stuff racks up. So you got to account for it somehow. So no different than you go to a doctor, they want to do an x-ray. They charge you for that machine and that technician's time to do that x-ray. No different than the car world.
Exactly.
What baffles me is you go to a restaurant, you just order whatever, and whatever the bill is, it is. You go to a car shop and you want to fine tooth comb every fucking thing, right? We ask you, hey, do you want to flush with that? And you chopping our heads off. Why do I need that? I don't need that. So it amazes me that certain, you go to a doctor's
professions.
You go to a doctor and they charge me $1,000. I guess I got to pay it without even inquiring. But you go to a mechanic shop, and again, because you don't see what we're fixing, there's no visualization to it, right? There's no, you don't feel like you got anything for your money because you don't see the PCV valve that went bad, right? Or the valve cover gases that's leaking or whatnot.
Yeah, it is amazing that people don't question other fields of work the way they do.
Well, remember that one time we brought a cheeseburger to McDonald's and asked them to cook it for us? No, because it didn't fucking happen. Because you don't do that shit.
No one does that.
You want to bring a part to a shop to have them put it on. If it were me, I'd say, you know what? Depending on how busy I was that day, I'll take your money and I'll put it on. But if it doesn't work, or if I diagnose it as something else, I'm going to put on what I think it needs, and you're going to pay me for that because I'm not going to waste my time or have you pay me for nothing, right? I'd rather fix the car and be paid for it than spend time to tell you it's something else and get it back to you and not charge you anything because I lost that time on my end.
And the parts you bring in from, budget internet, partsdepot.com, whatever, aren't going to carry the manufacturer's parts warranty that the parts that may be more expensive that you can get through the parts department are going to carry. So that part specifically may be covered under a warranty through AutoZone or Napa, wherever you source the part, but you're still going to end up paying labor again. And if it does fail, which a lot of times those parts are produced at subpar quality, you're going to end up having to replace it prematurely, whereas the manufacturer's updated parts, they go through all sorts of revisions. So you typically are going to get the newest and best version of that part from the manufacturer at the time of failure. But verifying that is the cause of failure, as we talked about a little bit in thermostats, it's a common thing, but at least if you do pay a dealer to put one in on our side, or my personally side of things, it does carry a 2-year unlimited mileage warranty. So it's something to consider in the whole cost, that you can redeem at any dealership across the United States.
Most engine and transmissions are almost like a new car warranty.
4 years, 50,000 miles.
Right. So why would you want to buy a used one from a junkyard to save $1,000 when it can fail, or you can get a new one? Yeah. Okay.
And you have no idea the maintenance on that engine or transmission before that.
So let's look at one thing. You drive a car for 100,000 miles. It never needs brakes, right? Brakes wear out. Now you go buy new brakes and they wear out every 10,000 miles. Okay. So you save money on the front end because you bought cheaper brakes. But in the long run, you went to the shop 14 times and had them done over and over again. No different than OEM parts compared to aftermarket parts. You get your good ones and you get your bad ones. And being in the field, I can look at a part and be like, yeah, this thing's made like shit. Right. They got no R&D department. They just bought a part. They measured it, sent it to their machinist. The machinist cut one out. They slap it in a box and try to sell it to you. Right. It doesn't fit. I've had stuff I've had to grind and make work because the customer wanted to use their part, right? And like, we've already spent this much time to get down to that area that I don't want to push the car outside and now it's inoperable. Right. I'll make it work, right?
That's what you want. Over on power steering pumps.
Oh yeah. Like I'll make it work, but this is the last time we're doing this kind of shit.
Yeah.
For anybody. Well, we had the one dude, he came to us and he needed a wiring harness for his car. He refused my diagnosis that it needed a wiring harness. He did not want to put a wiring harness in it because it cost a lot of money through Mercedes, right? So he went to Menards.
That's right.
And he bought yards and yards and rolls of wiring and tried to make his own.
I'm so glad that guy got rid of the car. I haven't seen him in years.
It was a mess.
Thank God.
Even before, that was the second wiring harness because the first one, he came back to the shop and I showed him, your wiring harness melted. Like it melted so fine that the other part of the wiring harness was flush, right? So where the tape sectioned off this little leg of power, it was gone. And I didn't find it till I turned the harness over and seen the itty bitty piece of green sticking out. And then I found the other part bolted to the ground or power or whatever it was. And like it just gone in between the two. So he says, what does it need? I said, well, it needs a wiring harness. He goes, well, would you give me a break to put it in? I said, I'll tell you what, we usually charge, 6-8 hours, whatever. I know I can do these pretty quick. I'll do it super fast for you. And then we'll give you a discount, whatever it takes me to do it. I won't make any money on it. I'll just make whatever my time is, right? Just to help you out. So he turns around and tells the manager something as he walks out of the shop. The manager comes over to me. He goes, are you fucking crazy? What is your problem? I says, what are you talking about, Jeff? And he goes, that guy just told me what you told him. I'm like, okay. And like, what's the problem? Like, I'm trying to help him out. He goes, you're going to do it for free? I said, excuse me? He goes, the customer just said, your technician said he's going to do it for free. I says, go get that motherfucker right now. We are not doing shit for free.
He did that repeatedly.
Oh, man.
And then acted like it was a joke.
Yeah.
All the time.
But yeah, Menards getting his own fucking wiring harness. So diagnostics can be taken many different ways. Make sure you inquire. Don't just get mad. If you're the customer listening, don't just get mad at what they say and want to take it out of the shop. Just ask a couple questions. And if you don't like what they're telling you and there are more employees, ask to deal with somebody else. Maybe, out of the 5 service advisors they have there, the guy you got is the new guy. You don't know what he's doing, or he had a bad day and he's taking it out on your car. Just deal with somebody else. There's nothing wrong with asking for a manager and just asking, can we dig deeper into this? I think it can benefit you both on the long end because they see that you're not going to take anything that they throw at you and you're going to call them out on it. And then maybe they'll just be like, okay, we've seen this before and we had this problem and we're just anticipating the worst. You'll get some more information out of it. But
it doesn't hurt to ask questions.
Lots of questions always.
Everybody appreciates. I always appreciate informed clients. I mean, as long as you are a rational, reasonable person and aren't demanding us to do things that just don't make sense, I think every other service writer would appreciate a informed, rational, reasonable client.
So the customer brings in a car to have an alignment check done.
Alignment check.
We put it on the rack.
Yeah.
It needs an alignment because he's got 4 new tires and air suspension.
Right.
And it's a little cattywampus.
Yeah.
Right.
Uh-huh.
So D-Rock calls the customer and says, sir, you need an alignment. And this guy starts yelling at him. How dare you try to sell me an alignment? All I brought it in there for was an alignment check. What the fuck do you think we do an alignment check? We check to see if it needs one. And if it needs one, we let you know it needs one.
Tell you it needs one. What did you think was going to happen here?
Oh, man. And it just lights him up. And I've never seen him so mad. I think he hung up on the guy.
That was crazy.
Just come get your car.
Ears were red. He was steaming.
Oh, man. So on the other side of diagnosis, right? So you pay for diagnosis. They tell you it needs yada, yada, yada. They put it in, tell you it's hunky-dory. you're on your way home and your light comes back on or the problem resurfaces. That's what we call a comeback. Now, most people don't know that if it's under warranty, in most manufacturers, it's 3 months or 3,000 miles. It's considered a comeback and the shop won't get paid for it. In those scenarios, you may bring it back and their answer may be, well, it's not that. Now it's this. Well, that's because they won't get paid otherwise. Right. So somehow they make it work. The first story obviously was wrong. So, they don't have to claim that one again. They claim a second story. Right. And that's when you get it covered because it doesn't match the first one. So it's not a comeback technically.
Different damage code.
Yeah. So the dealership gets paid. My biggest trick, if you're a technician listening to comebacks, is if I was going to put this part on and it didn't fix it, what would I do next? Right. So I would do that step next. Duplicating the problem is one thing, but I would make sure I can make the problem happen. All right. So duplicating it to me is crack it. Yeah. Duplicating it to me is when the customer states my engine runs bad at 2,000 RPM. So I drive the car and say, yep, it runs bad at 2,000 RPM. I duplicated it. What I want to do is I want to create it. So I want to find what I have to do to make that car make that problem. Once I do that, I know what system I have to track down, right? Shit, I had that one crazy one. The car came in with an EVAP code, meaning, we would think loose gas cap, right? The infamous gas cap. The charcoal canister shutoff valve, which opens and closes to let air in and out of the fuel tank, was bad. So we ordered one and it came with an updated wiring harness.
Oh, that's right.
I put it on the car and let it go. I did not double check to make sure it worked before it left because we've done them 100 times before, right? Car leaves, car comes back a couple days later, same light. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I run through the test. I'm activating it with a scanner and it's not turning on. I check the connector with my meter. It's got power and ground. The new part just failed or it was a bad part. Okay. So I put the second one on, plug it in. I'm like, this time I'm going to check it. I use my scanner, hook it up, activate it, and it doesn't operate. Like, you got to be kidding me. So I check with my meter. I've got power and ground. So I checked the solenoid by jumping my own power and ground to it and it clicked. But when I plug it in, it's not clicking with the car. Come to find out that this solenoid, which maybe all of them do, I don't know. Because again, I'm not smart. I'm just knowledgeable. The power had to specifically be on one pin and the ground had to be on the other. It was a strictly polarized right way. Okay. So I'm looking at the wiring harness and I checked the wiring diagram. The updated wiring harness was wired backwards. It put the positive to the negative and the negative to the positive.
It was the same connector?
We had 3 of them in stock, right? And they were all miswired. So I went to parts and I says, you got to remember this. I went to parts and I told Matt, I says, dude, you've got to call the parts depot. This is wrong. So he created a case. They call them up and they go, we've checked the diagrams. Your tech is wrong. He needs to continue his diagnostics. And I'm like, no, you call them back and tell them they're fucking wrong because I got one right here in front of my face. Before he had a chance to notify them, they call back and says, I'm sorry, we did bring it to another person and they verified that they miswired them from the whatever, what's the distributor we had. So they had a whole box of like 100 of these things or more, and they were all miswired. Damn. Right. So I'm like, hell yeah, I figured that out. But then I'm like, what the fuck, Lou? It took me 2 times of doing this to figure this out. Right. So yeah, comebacks. You always want to make sure you verify the repair. Now, the bad part is that you may not get paid for it. Right. So you quote a job for 2 hours. It takes you an hour and a half to get down there, diagnose it and fix it. And then you got to drive it for another hour to make sure it's fixed. Right. So I wouldn't look at it as I lost a half an hour. I would divide what I made on that job by how much time it took me. And that would tell me that job paid me $48. Okay. So in the end, you accumulate more. So you may lose on one car, but the next car you've already done spark plugs 50 times before, dude. You know how to do spark plugs quick, right? So don't make every car the make it or break it. Like, I got to make 10 hours on this car. No, just fix the car. You'll be the guy that can fix everything and you'll get more cars, right? You'll be the guy that can take care of them and make sure there's no comeback. The guy who doesn't have comebacks is the guy that gets more work. or unless you know how to do B services really, really fucking good. But yeah, so on the front end, you got diagnostics to make sure something's bad. And on the back end, you've got comebacks. And like I said, the worst ones were never leaves. You just want to make sure that the car is fixed before it leaves. It's always better to take the extra time to do it now than it is the other time. There's an old saying, if you don't have time to do it right the first time, you don't have time to do it right the second time. Right. So just do it right one time, get it done. Customers will be happy. You'll be a good, reputable shop.
Right. It's a better reflection on everybody.
Oh, big time, you know. So, and there's nothing wrong with telling the customer, hey, I quoted you this. It actually took us this. So would you mind kicking in a couple more? Because it took us that time. If not, we'll just hold you to what you authorize. It's totally up to you. Because sometimes the guilt trip would get you a couple extra bucks, right? You know,
or we took the time to drive your car and we, you know, the issue came back. We need more, even to just asking more time. If it is a car that's under warranty, just that frank conversation with the customer and being honest and upfront, you know, really goes a long way. You know, explaining what's happened and what's led up to the point of why we decided to do what we did. And I think just open communication really helps.
Another thing I did to every car got its oil checked, right? Every fluid got checked. Yeah. Air in tires, air in the spare. There was time, you know, when I would put wipers on and clean the windshield. Oh my God, that pisses me off. Why would you slap wipers on a dirty windshield and let it ride? You're going to ruin those new wipers,
or
right?
not top up washer fluid.
Yeah. So there's nothing worse than having a car come into the shop. You put $1,000 worth of work into it, or maybe more. The car leaves. 10 minutes later, the customer sprays the washer and it runs out of fluid, right? So
low tire pressure light
so
goes on or whatever.
First, they're happy that you did all that work and it's fixed, but then something as small as $1 a gallon of washer fluid that you could have used just ruined their experience because now they've got to come back there, which, you know, put your own fucking washer fluid in. But on the flip side, you just had it in the shop. You just had it in the shop. How did they miss this, right? So just the basics. Always cover the basics because you can learn a lot from a car. Let's say you go to fill the washer fluid and it pours right on the floor. Boom, you got another sale.
Right.
You need washer fluid, right?
You gotta have it.
They may have overlooked the fact that they had this problem. Some people do. You get a brain fart. You bring your car into the shop and you forget what you need, right? Yeah? You agreeing with me?
I agree.
Did you fall asleep?
Almost.
All right.
It's late.
It is.
My bedtime.
So, diagnosis, comebacks, smelly technicians.
Top up washer fluid.
Top it up with washer fluid.
Upsell washer fluid tank diagnosis.
Give some money back to the customers.
Remove wheel well liner.
Yes. All that
diagnose.
All that good
It wasn't
jazz.
doing that before I got my oil changed.
Well, I'll tell you what. So
before you topped it up.
If you're listening in the car right now, okay, and you hit a bump and you hear a little clunk, I know what that is. If you press the brake and the car starts to shake a little bit, I know what that is too. If you give the car gas and it starts to vibrate, I know what that is. And you don't want to know what that is because that's expensive.
Trade that shit in.
If you turn to the right and the car makes extremely loud, crunching, grinding, rubbing noises.
Oof, that's bad.
Or the left, I know what that is.
Either way.
Either way. So when you get an experienced guy, diagnosis is easy just by a few questions. Just a scenario. Give me the scenario. What do you got going on? And just a couple questions and we can whittle down to the nitty gritty what's going on. It just...
That's a good thing too about a shop that sees frequent cars of the same makes and models. You know, they'll see those repetitive. We see this all the time. We work on them frequently, so we know these are common issues. Just like we talked about with S classes and lower ball joints, it makes it a lot easier typically for you in the end in money you spent instead of having somebody that doesn't know what they're looking at trying to figure something out, and or potentially paying that extra higher dollar per hour invoice on someone that knows what they're looking for and can go straight to the problem, give you a solution right off the bat. So choose wisely.
Choose whatever. Just choose.
Yeah.
Make a decision. Find a place. Make some friends. Don't make enemies.
Right.
They'll take care of you.
Be cool. That's my number one recommendation.
We've said it before because it makes sense.
Be cool.
Right. Just be cool. Go in there. Work shit out. They'll take care of you. Dealership Stories. I'm Lou.
This is Ralph.
Adios. See ya. Hey, it's Lou, Master Technician from Stealership Stories. Hope you enjoyed the show. Do you need car information, repair advice, or just a second opinion? Let me know at www.cartechconnect.com. That's www.cartechconnect.com.